Three Commanders we're seeing making the rounds here in New Orleans, one current, one future, and one past. They all had interesting things to say, and it's all right here on Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome inside today's episode of Locked On Commanders. I'm your host, David Harrison, here with you every Monday through Friday, your friend on the ground covering the Washington Commanders for Sports Illustrated's CommanderGameDay.com, contributing to WUSA 9's local coverage of the team as well this season. I want to thank you for coming through today for this episode in which we're going to talk about and hear from Darrell Green, Commanders, Washington football legend, Jayden Daniels, and we're going to talk about what Myles Garrett has been saying here on Super Bowl Media Row in New Orleans, Louisiana. Everydayers, those of you who come through every day, you already know this, but you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you are listening to today's podcast. Please do. If you're new to the show, thanks for giving it a try. Appreciate you coming through for Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders. Hope you like it. Hope you stick around. Hope to see you again sometime soon. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code, all lowercase, all one word, Locked On NFL, to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Current Washington Commanders quarterback Jayden Daniels is in New Orleans and made the rounds to plenty of national outlets on Wednesday on Media Row. Also took time to talk to local media before receiving the Faith in Action Award later on Wednesday evening. So we'll hear from Jayden directly later on in the show. But first, I want to talk about some of the things that Jayden was saying going around here. Some of it important, some of it for entertainment purposes, right? That's what the NFL is all about, after all, is entertainment. But before we get to what Jayden said, I do want to talk about what Patrick Mahomes had to say about Jayden. So JP Finley went to the Kansas City Chiefs media availability, asked Patrick Mahomes kind of his thoughts on Jayden Daniels. And Patrick said, quote, "You can be talented, but can you progress? Learn what defenses are doing to account for you and get better from that." And it seemed like he did that. Is going to just be the start of a great career, end quote. And certainly, you know, Patrick Mahomes is not going to get up there and say anything negative about a competitor anyway. But at the same time, it's true. Like, it rings true. And these are things that we talked about throughout the first year of Jayden Daniels coming as quarterback. A lot of excitement surrounding him when he was drafted with the number 2 overall pick. Certainly a lot of expectation on what his athletic ability might be able to bring. But, you know, if you go back to the conversation we had with Trevor Sikkema earlier this week, like the amount of growth and the amount of ability Jayden really showed in this first NFL season even surpassed what we all expected and what even, you know, the highest hopes, the highest hyped or the most hyped fan might have expected to see out of Jayden in year one. And it's been really impressive, and seeing some of the things that he's been able to develop during that year. Usually by about week 4 or 5, you see a rookie quarterback, you kind of know what he's going to be for the rest of the season. But with Jayden, that wasn't the case. Now, he had that little bit of a speed bump with the rib injury and everything that followed after that, and the 3-game losing streak, which probably should have been a 2-game losing streak. Certainly should have beaten the Steelers, in my opinion. Didn't come out well against the Cowboys, got beat by the Eagles. So, you know, that's all history, and we can rehash that another time. But outside that little, you know, small stretch of the season, you really saw once Jayden got fully healthy again, was able to practice fully again and do his preparation the way, and maximize his preparation time the way he likes to. You really saw that kind of potential take off from him, to the point where at the end of the season, we're talking about him being a team leader. We're talking about him taking the game in his own hands and making plays for the offense when the offense might be struggling like the run game did late in the season. So it's great that we see it. We watch him every day. We watch every game that he plays. But it's really cool to hear that, you know, Patrick Mahomes, obviously a guy who's been doing it at the highest level here in the NFL for quite some time now, on the cusp of maybe winning a 3rd straight Super Bowl, would be the first starting quarterback, first NFL franchise in history to do that. So when you hear a guy like that giving the quarterback that you cover, the quarterback that you all cheer for, his due, his props, his flowers, as the kids would say, certainly very cool to hear that. So let's talk about what Jayden had to say, though. First, we'll talk about a little bit more of an entertaining type of factor, right? But Diana Rossini of The Athletic had him on her show and asked him to identify his 5 favorite plays of the season. And these are always kind of cool. I like to hear, quarterbacks throw, hundreds of passes a year, make runs. If you're Jayden Daniels, score touchdowns, convert 3rd downs, convert 4th downs. So it's always cool to hear, what some of these plays were. And Jayden said, these aren't in a specific order, but the first one he did identify was the game-sealing touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin against Cincinnati Bengals. So you go back to week 3, Monday Night Football. Again, very much a rookie quarterback. just came off a week 2 game where the Commanders didn't score a single touchdown, yet still won that game 7 for 7 on field goals that day. Amazing week 2 victory. That followed a week 1 loss, obviously, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So lots of things stacked up against them, right? Road game, first Monday nighter. Cincinnati Bengals, who at the time, didn't get off to a great start of the season, but were still considered to be one of the better teams in the NFL. Certainly Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And, we went through this all season, right? Like Lamar versus Jayden, even though they're not actually directly competing against each other on the field, that's kind of the storyline is always quarterback versus quarterback. So to see Jayden Daniels go out there and outduel Joe Burrow, but that play, man, free blitzer coming from the right side, right into Jayden's face and just stands in there, takes the pressure, drops a dime down to Terry McLaurin, which, amazingly enough, it took 12 quarters of play between Terry and Jayden to get the first touchdown connection. But that was the first of 13 touchdown connections between the two, a franchise single season record for Washington football is a big one. It was an early season sign of things to come for what we were going to see from Jayden Daniels and really kind of a coming out moment. So I can understand, if that were, and again, Jayden said it was in no specific order. So he didn't say that was like his single favorite play of the season. But if it were to be, it'd be hard to blame him. Second one that he mentioned was a game-winning touchdown pass to Jamison Crowder against Philadelphia Eagles again. And even Terry McLaurin is involved in that one. Terry is split. I think it was split wide left. He was either split wide left or in the slot left side. I remember he's on the left side, runs an outside breaking, or gets an outside release, rather, I should say, off the line of scrimmage. And because of that, Reed Blankenship, the Eagles safety, who's supposed to be where Jamison Crowder is going into the end zone for the touchdown, cheats a little bit towards Terry McLaurin, opens up that window, and Jayden Daniels just lasers the football right in there to Jamison Crowder, who, like I've said several times on this program, all he does is convert third downs and catch game-winning touchdowns. So that was one of them. The third one was a Hail Mary, of course, right? We don't even need to say anything else about it. Hail Mary is obviously on one of those top 5 lists. Fourth one he mentioned was the 4th and 2 pass against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round. Here's where we get into the playoffs a little bit. 4th and 2 from the Tampa 5. Washington is trailing at this point in time. 5-yard touchdown pass. Terry McLaurin puts the Commanders back on top, 20-17. It was one of those, we heard Dan Quinn talk a lot during the season, the head coach, about winning time moments. And that was one of those winning time moments because the Washington Commanders take the lead. The Buccaneers do get the ball back, eventually take it down the field and get a game-tying field goal at 20-20, but left way too much time on the clock for Jayden Daniels. He's able to drive the team down in range for a game-winning Zane Gonzalez field goal. So that was number 4. Number 5 was a deep pass to De'Ami Brown against the Detroit Lions, divisional round playoff game. Arguably one of the bigger upsets in the playoffs this year. Another back foot throw, another throw under pressure. 2 Lions are in coverage. 2 secondary members from Detroit defense. One is on top of the play, one is near the play. Puts it where De'Ami Brown can bend outside, make that catch, and really, it's a great play for Jayden, but it's got to be one of De'Ami's favorite plays as well because it really kind of showcases the mental development he's made this season, where he understands how to manipulate the defense and not just run your route, but make sure that what you're doing as the ball is coming towards you prevents the defender from being able to make a play on the ball. So great selection of 5 plays there from Jayden himself. Again, I know a lot of people like the Hail Mary would probably be the most favorite, but there's a couple other that are technically, as far as like a skill set standard, a little bit harder. But look, all great plays, part of just a great rookie season from Jayden. But Jayden also talked about some serious business, including the fact that even those of us who had high hopes for him didn't expect what we got. He himself, not surprised by the first-year success. And as always, he brings his teammates into that conversation. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode of Locked On Commanders brought to you in part by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy for you to get in on the action. You can even take a prop bet for Eagles offensive lineman Lane Johnson to score a touchdown if you're feeling a little bit bold. I'm not going to lie. I'm probably going to put $1 on that because the odds on that thing are so good that even if I just put $1 on it, if it happens, I'm going to make some decent money off that dollar wager. So I'm probably going to go ahead and take care of that one. The live betting feature also lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl is just icing on the cake. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Some of us, a lot of us, had high expectations for Jayden Daniels' rookie season, but even we didn't see how good Daniels was going to be in his first year. He did say, however, he did see how good he would be in his first year, but not in a cocky way, still in a very authentic Jayden Daniels way. We're going to talk about that next year on Locked On Commanders. If you want to get even more out of the show, become a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. From there, I'm going to text you throughout the offseason. There is no offseason really in the National Football League. We're going to be busy here in New Orleans. We'll be at the Combine later this month, league meetings in March, NFL draft in April. We're right back to mini camps or rookie camps. And next thing you know, we'll be back at it in stadiums. I'm hoping week 1 in Spain against the Miami Dolphins. We'll see if I get my wish. But anyway, if you want to come along for the ride, join subtext.com/LockedOnCommanders is where you go to do it. So continuing on with what Jayden has been talking about here in New Orleans during the Super Bowl week, he was asked on the Rich Eisen show if he himself was surprised about the success he had this season. And Jayden, of course, said, quote, "No, not really." But he also made sure, as he always does, to turn it back on the team, turn it back on his teammates. Continued, quote, "I think more so, it was like we knew what we were capable of. And as soon as we got into the playoffs, we got a shot. Anybody can make it at that point," end quote. And this is something that we talked about coming into, even when they made the playoffs, not a lot of people gave the Commanders a lot of, what do you want to call it, credit, expectation to make any noise in the postseason, and certainly beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the wild card round. I know a lot of Buccaneers fans, Buccaneers media, the Bucs themselves probably came away from that saying they beat themselves more than the Commanders beat them. And that tends to be kind of a common theme when teams lose games, is we beat ourselves more than the opponent beat us. And then going to Detroit, even with the injuries of the Detroit Lions had suffered, getting David Montgomery back, a lot of people expected the Lions to kind of run away with that one. Instead, it was, again, the Washington Commanders really kind of putting it on them in their home stadium. And I'll tell you, being in Ford Field, for the divisional round, back-to-back years, I covered the Buccaneers-Lions playoff game last divisional round, and then obviously the Commanders-Lions divisional round this year. Couldn't be two more different environments by the time those games were over because of the way that they went. Obviously, when home teams lose, those environments get a little bit quiet and a little bit sadder. But, you hear Jayden talk about that confidence, man. And, we heard Dan Quinn talk about it early in the season as well. And it was really evident, going back through training camp, you really kind of saw a group of players that were really just kind of coming together, and look, it's hard to get 90 people on a practice field pulling in the same direction. So certainly there was kind of one or two, guys that just weren't getting with the program for whatever reason. And we talked, extensively about that. Most of those guys, if not all of them, are gone, at this stage. A lot of them were gone before the end of training camp or even early in the season. But, you could feel the confidence in this team and the direction they were going. Even with that confidence that you could feel, however, I don't know that we all expected it to reach the heights that it did. So great to hear from Jayden that he was, feeling that confidence early on throughout the season. Love about the Jayden Daniels answer. He always does this, and I continue to love it about him. He gets asked a question about himself, turns it on to his team and his teammates. Was also asked where he grew the most personally. Said, quote, "I think just how much more of a voice I have as far as a leader within the locker room, the impact, even though I'm younger than a lot of guys in the locker room, they still will listen to me no matter if I have something to say or not," end quote. And this is something, too, that, his leadership presence didn't really make itself felt on the playing field in the public eye until the last quarter of the season. Really coming out of the bye week, I think, is where you really started to feel Jayden Daniels' leadership influence start to really show up, between the lines. But really, you go back to early on in the season, and I remember telling you guys, you go in that locker room, and again, I'll go back to give Dan Quinn a lot of credit, mixing up the locker room. It's not quarterbacks here, then O-linemen, then receivers. They're all mixed up, I think Jayden's lockers, I think he's next to Jeremy Chin on one side, and I think he's next to Andrew Wiley on the other side. Don't quote me on that, but, they're not just, separated by groups. This is a team. He wants, Dan Quinn wants his entire team just kind of integrated with each other. But I remember seeing Jayden, whose locker's in like the far right corner of the locker room, going over to the, near left side of the locker room to talk to Mikey Sainristil, or being over in the far right corner talking trash with Bobby Wagner, you know what I mean? And just seeing him be comfortable in his environment early on as a not just quarterback, but as a teammate, right? And it was something that, quite honestly, I've covered a lot of quarterbacks, Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, obviously the Washington, quarterbacks, Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, Sam Howell. And it's really something that I haven't seen other quarterbacks do. We just kind of go around the room and And not even like, we're not even like watching tape together and saying, hey, man, when I see this, I want you to do that. But just being teammates and just being, they use the word brotherhood, right? Just being brothers and just hanging out, him and Diami chopping it up, So, and I think that's an important part, again, not every leader has to be a friend to everybody they lead, but having that ability to connect. We always talk about with coaches, right? That ability to connect with the people around you. Well, for a quarterback, it can be just as important. I mean, look at what happened with the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, undoubtedly a Hall of Fame talent, but because there was a very clear disconnect between the top of that organization and the bottom of it, the New York Jets were not able to find any sustained success. So I think really good insight there from Jayden. Jayden also revealed a little bit more fun that his rookie dinner, only $2,000. And it's crazy to say only $2,000 dinner tab in real life, but that's the life of a number one, first round pick for a team in the National Football League. If you don't know the rookie dinner, so rookie takes the team to dinner, they rack up the bill, the quarterback room to dinner, rack up the bill, and then the rookie pays the entire bill. But he said the quarterback room was really nice to him, didn't make it too expensive. You stick me with a $2,000 tab, boy, we're gonna have some problems. So not just current Washington Commanders player Jayden Daniels had something to speak. Future Washington Commanders player, and yes, I'm being bold, I'm being bullish on this edge. Future Commanders edge Myles Garrett also made the rounds in New Orleans, and of course was asked about trade destinations. Specifically, Myles Garrett was asked about Mina Kimes, about what he's looking for in the next team he's going to play for. He said, quote, someone who's in position to contend soon or right away, and I could come in and still play my brand of football. I don't want to have to chain up my game too much, and I don't think they'd want to. As a coaching and my teammates, I think we can try to elevate each other, and I can take someone over the hump. End quote. Well, let's look at this from a bullet standpoint. Let's see. He wants someone who can contend soon or right away. A team that just contended in the NFC Championship game certainly fits that bill. Someone that he could come in and play his brand of football. Well, guess what? Myles Garrett, your brand of football, Washington Commanders brand of football. Doesn't want to chain up his game. Joe Wade Jr., as you guys hear every single week during the season, all about maximizing player potential. And then he wants to be able to elevate each other and get over the hump. And that is exactly what this team is all about. So when you hear Myles Garrett talk about what kind of team he wants to join, certainly sounds a lot about the Washington Commanders. And does that team need a quarterback? He was also asked about that. He said, with quote unquote, with any playoff team or any championship team, they're going to have a quarterback, a good quarterback. You've seen some game managers out there with a great defense and win it all. But if you want to consistently be at the top, you got to have a really good quarterback. And that's hopefully where I'd find myself, end quote. Commanders got a really good quarterback. So Myles Garrett, everything is just coming up Commanders, ladies and gentlemen. And look, I know some of you are worried that the price tag is too high. I hear you. I don't necessarily disagree with you, but I'm all for Adam Peters taking the big swing in this one. I'm sorry. I can't agree that he shouldn't do it. No, I don't know if he will do it, but I definitely think he should take a swing at it, at least get in the conversation, like I said, on our previous episode. Myles was also asked at the Sports Illustrated booth, specifically about the Commanders. And of course, he didn't, go into specifics about which team he wants to play for, but he did say that he felt like he fit what they wanted to do. He felt like he could help them out, and they could have a need for him here in Washington, or I should say they're in Washington as we are currently in New Orleans. So good stuff there from Myles Garrett. But again, we got to talk about Commander present, Commander of the future. We also got to hear from Commander of the past, Darrell Green, and also more Jayden Daniels coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you in part by BetterHelp. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. But therapy can be a helpful tool for anybody who's going through anything. It doesn't have to be a grand traumatic type of stress for you to just need somebody outside your life to give you some perspective. I've done it for things that some people would consider traumatic, but I've also done it for some things that people would consider run-of-the-mill and maybe something that every human being goes through. But guess what? Life is a team sport, and sometimes we need a teammate to come in and help us out. So what do you want your 2025 story to be? Every January brings a new chapter and 365 pages of blank pages for you to fill. So if there's a part of your life that you want to rewrite or a plot twist that you've been craving to make happen, I'm surrounded at these types of events by a whole lot of people who took their destiny in their hands, grinded it out. Not always easy to do. A lot of times very difficult. And again, team effort. You got to meet the right people and make your destiny what it is you want. Life isn't about fleeting resolutions. It's about taking control and becoming the author of your own story. So write your own story with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get $10 off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Commanders here from Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're going to hear now from Washington football legend, cornerback Darrell Green, who took a second with me on the red carpet at last night's award event to talk about his excitement about the future of the Washington Commanders and, of course, quarterback Jayden Daniels.
I am grateful for what they have done, new ownership, new GM, new head coach, number one quarterback, Jayden. So many extraordinary young men that they added to the roster, and they just have been a blessing to our community. We lost so much over the last 20 years. So much of what had been worked for, not just on the field, but our position in our community, our influence, our interaction with the younger generation, the value that we bring. It just got all burnt down. And so now we've got everybody's attention that we're here. And then our next job is to make sure that our young guys embrace our city and bring that other value that we so desperately need in the young people, boys, girls, mamas, daddies. And when you play professional sports in America, it gives you access, it gives you resources, it gives you influence, and how you use that is important. So I want to see them win so that we can have more influence, so we can get both. I did it. You know, I've been married 40 faithful years with one woman, played for one team. They paid me, and I had fun. I won. I'm a champion in Hall of Fame. But then I went and said, okay, now, what about this little fella? What about that little fella? What about this lady? What about that lady? That's my part. And that sounds like some old guy, but say call it what you want to call it. But that's what I'm pulling for. Let's win this Super Bowl so we can have more influence on our community. Jayden Daniels can come out here and talk about how to be a man. How do you live as a single athlete? Talk about morals. Talk about attitude. Talk about dedication. Talk about work ethic. So that's what I get excited about. And I think that they're going to have that portion. And that's not for everybody. It's not everybody's apple pie. But that's what I did in my life. That's what I believe worked. And that's what I want to see them win the Super Bowl. And then we're going to go use that.
Always great to get a second to chop it up with Darrell Green, even if it's only for a second. I always appreciate Darrell's time. Always a great dude to talk to, but also got a chance to talk to Jayden before he headed into the event, into the red carpet. So we're going to hear that. JP Finley of NBC Sports and I talking to Jayden before last night's event. And I kicked it off with his thoughts. Now that the season's been over for a little bit, his thoughts looking back at his rookie year.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard. I'm good, but I'm not satisfied with what I did this year. I feel like I could always get improved and get better. So, we'll see what year two holds.
And I don't want to ask you to get in trouble for recruiting or anything like that, but obviously there's a lot of talks about some star players maybe wanting to play on your squad next year. How do you feel about your team being among those that people are talking about having great players want to come to?
It's awesome just to have that notoriety as an organization, as a team. So we'll see who wants to come and play for us, and we'll see what moves are being made.
How exciting is this for you, being at the Super Bowl, NFL honors, everything you're experiencing?
It's exciting being here for honors. Obviously, we wanted to be here for a different reason, playing the game on Sunday, but it's exciting for sure.
I got to ask Patrick Mahomes about you today, and he said, obviously he can make all the throws, has all the talent, but it's his work ethic that showed me how much progress he made. What's it mean to hear that from a guy like Mahomes?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you just want to respect his peers. So obviously Mahomes, what he's done in this league and what he continues to do, it's a good feeling just to know that your peers respect you.
The competitor you are, is it going to be tough to be here and not game planning and getting ready?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, we're one game away, but you gotta roll with the punches, you gotta move on in life.
Thanks for your time.
Appreciate it, Jayden. All right, that was historic Hall of Fame cornerback Darrell Green, and definitely too early to say future Hall of Fame quarterback Jayden Daniels, but great. Should be Rookie of the Year Jayden Daniels about 12 hours after this episode goes up on YouTube and on your audio feed. So I appreciate you coming through for the next episode of Locked On Commanders. I got a couple of Super Bowl specific mailbag questions from insiders that we're going to go over, and we're going to look at the free agent situation facing the Chiefs and the Eagles, and see which of those teams could benefit the Washington Commanders coming up in 2025. In the meantime, if you've got questions or comments, all you got to do is text them to me, and to text them to me, all you got to do is become a Locked On Commanders insider at joinsubtext.com/LockedOn. Locked On Commanders. For your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. First up, Tyler the Madman Rolling in the morning gives you a healthy dose of NFL espresso. Tony Wiggins brings you back in the afternoon for some real NFL talk. It's the all-new Locked On NFL, and it's twice per day. As always, I want to thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. For the everydayers out there, I appreciate you coming through as consistently as you do. And until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind to one another. And I'll see you right back here next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.